Kyle here from All Media Reviews, here to continue on the vinyl collection A to Z with the letter M. This is probably going to be the second part of 3 parts. So here's the Mars Volta. The Mars Volta I only have a few records from, so I do have the newly reissued, and I didn't pay an arm and a leg for it. The debut album from 2003, Deloused in the Comatorium. Great record. Flows really well, although it has kind of a little bit of a sameness, but I still love it. Very important record in the history of like modern progressive rock, art rock, that kind of thing. So here's Francis the Mute, my favorite the Mars Volta record. I have one that's an unauthorized bootleg and one that's actually authorized and was released just a couple years ago. The other one I bought maybe like 2017 or 20. I showed it on Record Store Day. I remember I didn't realize it was a bootleg when I got it, but these were going for hundreds of dollars, the actual authorized, until they reissued it recently. So, but yeah, this is, Cassandra Gemini, Cygnus, Cygnus, The Widow. It's just, the climaxes are so good, the dynamics, the use of instrumentation, Cedric's vocal lines, just the riffs, the energy. There's so much I love about this record. It has some psych noodle in the middle that some people criticize it for, but I think overall it doesn't matter. The thing just works beginning to end really well. It's one of my favorite records of the last couple decades for sure. In MPAR, modern progressive art rock or whatever. So then I've got, what is in effect, 3 extra items from the Mars Volta on vinyl. This is a Televator's picture disc, 12-inch, which I thought I did show it, but maybe I didn't. It's got, oh yeah, this part of the artwork is cool. I wish I should be showing both. Televators from, Deloused in the Comatorium, of course. I don't know when this thing came out, if it was recent or came out in right in time of the album. This is a 3885 out of 5,000. So, I mean, I got it within the last few years, I think. I can't remember. I occasionally would see this stuff, but a lot of times it was just so expensive. So then I've got the Francis the Mute, the song, which is not on Francis the Mute, the album, 12-inch single, which also came out on like a bonus CD at Best Buy at one point back in 2005. But it's good, good track, but I've always understood why it wasn't included on Francis the Mute. And then I have Landscape Tantrums, which are the sort of, this is the Deloused in the Comatorium, like demos, that kind of stuff. I know it came out with that box set a couple years ago, but I got this actually on Record Store Day. They were selling it separately, so I figured I'd get it. Anyway, so that's it for the Mars Volta. I'd like to get more of their records. Specifically, I probably would get I almost got Nocturnicate. I saw it for like $40, and this was like in 2012, like right around the time it came out, 2014, at this record store that was closing. But I just kind of, it's like $40 is a lot. I like it. Ambitexture I might get for the right price. I don't know if I would bother with the Bedlam and Goliath, because I just can't stand the production on that. And Octahedron I also wouldn't pay a lot of money for, but the new record either. I don't, see what they do going forward. Scab Dates, the live album, I don't know. And I do need to get, I almost bought the EP, the debut EP, which I'm blanking on. It starts with it's like Tella something. Anyway, but that's the Mars Volta stuff. I have this album. This is a technical death metal band from Canada who are no more, I don't think. They're called Martyr. This is their 3rd and final record from 2000. I want to say it was like 2006. Feeding the Abscess. The energy is off the charts on this record. If you like technical death metal, this is pretty much your sort of required listening to me. Production's pretty good. It just doesn't. The energy is so infectious on this record. A lot of people were obsessed with it. I was reading about this on Rate Your Music back in the late 2000s, and I understood why. But I wish I could find a date on this. I remember I looked for this. I have it on CD, although the case is just like one of those thin plastic things. But I was surprised it was actually issued on vinyl, but I was happy to get it. So, okay, this is what? Yeah, this is... I showed this a few months back. It took a while to finally come in after like over a year. Mask of the Phantasm, their debut album from 2021, New Axial Age. Omar Ghaznavi. It has Thomas Pridgen from the Mars Volta. The singer sounds a lot like the singer from Metheny. I'm blanking on her name now. Not Chloe. Anyway, it's almost like Metheny playing with the Mars Volta from the 2000s. From like, Deloused and France's era, or even Amputecture. But the songs aren't that extensively long. But the saxophone really works on this. I talked about this in my review the last couple of years. I've talked about it more than once than when I got this vinyl a few months ago. After Omar lost, it was a painstaking process. He lost the shipping costs. He lost money, or I guess it was a lot more money to ship it than he realized. But anyway, it's a weird cover. I know it looks like cloth or something, but yeah, it's a terrific record if you haven't heard. If you like the Mars Volta especially, and Metheny for that matter. So all right, I've got 2 records from this band who are not a band I love, but I just happened to find the records for a reasonable price back. Heard their music on Radio K. It was about 10 years. It was like a little over 10 years ago, 2010, maybe 2011. It's this band called Memory House, and I think one of these is an EP. Oh, I also know why I have these, because I saw them live. I don't remember if they were even the headliner, but I bought them at the show, I think. I probably did. Because I have them, the slideshow effect, and I know that they lost their gear or something, got stolen. I don't know if they're even a band anymore, but it's like a duo. It's like I don't know if they're a husband, wife, or sister, but it was a guy and a girl from my memory. It's like dream pop. I remember I likened this a little bit to Zooey Deschanel's project with M. Ward, She and Him. Like, this is, like, the singer reminded me a little Zooey Deschanel. It's like, I like that kind of vocals done in this style. It's a little what's that stuff called? Like, vaporwave or whatever. There's a little bit of that in it, but that's not the focus of their sound. It's really just kind of, yeah, I mean, it's not prog exactly. It's maybe a little post-rock of a sort, but it's really more like dream pop. I mean, you could say, who's the artist that did Teen Dream, people were Beach House. There's a little bit of Beach House element, and I kind of like them more than Beach House. Although the last couple of years, Jake Root played something on his show from Beach House I kind of liked, so someday I may give Beach House a second assessment. I got kind of sick and nauseated with seeing Beach House's name so often, but the dream pop of the the late 2000s and the early to mid 2010s, but anyway, I think they're from Canada, Memory House. But yeah, Sub Pop Records, I don't know if they're around anymore, but one of them's called The Years, the EP, and then the slideshow effect, like I said, was the full length. It was like 2012, yeah. So I don't know, I wonder what happened to them. They were a good band. And I believe I did see them live, but I can't remember if it was with someone else or they were the headliner. It was early in the time I was dating my wife. I remember telling her I was going to see that show. Alright, so, yeah, this is not in the perfect order. Alright. So here's my collection from a band that I love that I've talked about here and there, but this is my collection from in effect, they're a trio from Portland, Oregon that are unfortunately not really active anymore. Menomena. But this is their debut album, I Am the Fun By Monster. It's a perfect record, 5-star record. One of my favorite records of the 2000s. The Monkey's Back is my favorite, but that's a Brent Knopf song. But every track on here works. It flows. The textures, the atmosphere. It's kind of less is more, and the use of saxophone, of course. Cough, Cough, and the Late Great Libido. Every track on here. The Strongest Man in the World. Their creativity on the little monster there, and the actual title is based on, it's like an acronym or changing of the words, like the first Menomena album. So of course they get the whole Menomena thing from their Sesame Street. I think they got their name from that. But yeah, it's a great debut album called I Am the Fun By Monster from 2000. It was 2004. I'm pretty sure it was 2003. That's interesting. Like 90. Maybe it is 2004. Well, I should know this. Anyway, know my Menomena history better. Of course. Alright, I'll go over the rest of this. So then they did an album called Under an Hour. I talked about this I did a Menomena video a couple of years ago, but that, I don't think it's come out on vinyl, but I'd love to get it. It's all instrumental. It's like 3 long pieces. But then they did this album. They're probably the most commercial album, and they won a Grammy, I think, for the artwork. It's very kind of like Led Zeppelin-like, Led Zeppelin 3, or... what's the name of this record again? Friend and Foe. It has Wet and Rusting, which is a song that got all over college radio, and that's why I first heard them. It's super catchy. It's just a incredibly infectious track, Wet and Rusting. But this record has tons of other songs that I like. The track list is it's like a puzzle. I didn't pull it out, but yeah, this came out in 2007. It was my first impression. I know I didn't like the rest of the record as much until later, but so that was Friend and Foe from 2007. Then the last album with Brent Knopf, 2010's Minds, which has a bunch of really great tracks also. Again, not pulling them up in front of me. I mean, I have to take the assistance of, and even this is a gatefold. I think I showed this in my Menomena video, but yeah, I like this record, but probably not as much as the first two. But I mean, it's pretty close. Well, you have to do this for another day, Barsuck. It doesn't even have the track list on here. They were, oh yeah, that does. Okay, so Taos, that's one of Kill 'Em All and Taos. I saw them on this tour. I know they came here for the Friend and Foe tour when I knew about them, but I couldn't go. It was the same night. I think it was the same night that I saw. Well, I'm trying to remember. It was in 2007. I knew I couldn't get there. So, Five Little Rooms, Sleeping Beauty. Interesting labels, but the writing was kind of on the wall, about when I saw them that Brent, of the three guys, there's Danny Syme, the drummer, and they all sing, and Justin Harris, the saxophone player. That Brent was probably, I think the members were kind of, love-hate. I don't know exactly. They weren't on the most positive terms from what I read from people. I never heard this from them. I never read an interview with this specifically. But so Brent had already done Ramona Falls, so he left, decided to pursue Ramona Falls as his primary musical project after this album. That was in 2010, Minds. So then their final record, and probably, I don't know if it will be their final record, but their last record from, it was 2012? It was 2011? It was 2012, the same year, I think, the second Ramona Falls album came out, Moms, which is just the two guys, Danny and Justin Harris, Danny Syme. I like this record, but not as much. It's more electronic, ironically, because Brent did most of the keyboard parts and he did a lot of the guitars, but yeah, it's a decent record. It's the other three I like more, but it's still a pretty good record among their whole canon. The other three, I'm not even counting Under an Hour. Yes, if Under an Hour ever comes out, I'm on that. So moving on, trying to get through this. This is my one release from highly influential, what you call them, extreme metal, gent inventors, Meshuggah. This is the IEP, and it's one track. And it flows really well, and it doesn't go over the top. And I first got into extreme metal, I was going to listen to a bunch of Meshuggah, and I did listen to some. I liked it, but and gent to me, like Periphery, a lot of these bands, I like Periphery briefly. Textures I like, but I'm very picky on whatever gent I ever listen to. The Contortionist, but I like the stuff after they ended using gent. But for whatever reason, this one Meshuggah release doesn't bore me. It works, and. Some of the other records people love, Destroy, Race, Improve, and Nothing, and some of the others, I don't know. It gets to be a little too headache-inducing, but this one particularly just doesn't do that. It just works beginning to end, so. I think it came out, was it 2004? Well, this was issued in 2014. I don't know what year. It was in the early 2000s, I want to say. It was long after I started listening to their music. Anyway, I know they were influenced on Pain of Salvation. Some of the members of Pain of Salvation were fans, so. Alright, so here is, I don't have these in the best of order, unfortunately, but I'm just going to show them. My Pat Metheny collection. I'm looking here. I mostly have the old stuff. Yeah, because that was 84. I'd like to do these in order. But, my apologies. I guess I could just go over them, because I know Bright Size Life is one of the first ones. It's this. I think that's the debut album, and then this is the. Yeah, this is the self-titled record. That was a few years later. The Pat Metheny Group. So I'm a big Pat Metheny fan. I've talked about him here and there on the channel, and in the blog, definitely. This one was later, too. All right, so yeah, this is my copy of Bright Size Life, the debut album from the Pat Metheny Group from '75. I listened to this a couple years ago, and I thought I used to like it more. It's not bad, but it's still subdued. Although he's doing some of this, the trumpet-sounding guitar tones, but... And here's my copy of the self-titled from '78, as I just mentioned. Again, this is the classic lineup with Lyle Mays, Mark Egan, and Dan Gottlieb. So then I have knowing the order. I think in chronology, my next record this is my go-to. This is First Circle. It has Yolanda You Learn and the title track, which are two of the best songs in jazz fusion ever, and two of the best drum performances ever by Paul Wertigo. I've never heard snare and cymbal work done so well, so produced, so efficiently and so distinctly. The rest of this is kind of new agey, but it works. It's kind of almost like a soundtrack. But this has Lyle Mays, and then Steve Rodby. Peter Osnar does some vocals. I think it's some trumpet. But yeah, I love First Circle. This is my go-to. Getting into Pat Metheny, that was the one that really turned my head and really got me convinced I really need to hear more of his music. So I have this album, because that was '84. This is a year before. This is Pat Metheny Travels. And I don't think Paul Wertigo's on this, actually. I think First Circle may have been the first one he was on. I don't know. I've never done an actual video on Pat Metheny, but I probably should just try doing one at some point. And I don't have a lot of his records I do not have, but some of them I don't know if they're actually have been issued on vinyl. The ones from the 80s, like these, obviously have. So this one came out in '89. This one is Letter from Home. I think I checked out a bunch of his CDs from the library. I did get this from the library at one point. But at this point, yeah, Paul Wertigo had moved. No, he was still with them. So he was up throughout the 80s. But Steve Rodby on bass, Lyle Mays, of course. Lyle Mays is like the one consistent member throughout most of Pat Metheny Group's history. There's Pat Metheny and then there's Pat Metheny Group. I mean, I don't have Imaginary Day or I don't even have Off Ramp, which I thought I did. Those are the two other ones that I'm on top of my... And then I'd love to get Speaking of Now. Speaking of Now and Imaginary, I don't know if they ever came out on vinyl. And I've seen The Way Up, but it's not cheap. I would probably buy it next time I see it. But this is the other Pat Metheny Group album that I really look to, that I have on vinyl, is the one just from a couple years ago, From This Place. It's very soundtrack-like. Love it. Love it. The production's great on it. I mean, he has, between his own stuff, the trio stuff, and then the Pat Metheny Group, he has probably north of like 60 or 70. I mean, I only want to pick the best stuff, of course, so... Alright, so here's my collection of one of my favorite groups, and this is the last part of this video, actually. Didn't quite realize when I put this stuff together, because I'm not going to go into and do the the rest of letter M, but this is my Mew collection. Mew, the Danish progressive pop, art rock, dream pop, you name it. Band from Denmark, Danish, what I said. So this is, I think, a record store day item. I got the guys to sign it. This is Frengers from 2005. Not Frengers, as I said in previous videos years ago. Frengers. Has Am I Rhino, Snow Brigade, 156, She's Spider I love, and like Comforting Sounds is a favorite. It's got actually a couple bonus tracks. I Should Have Been a Inside for You and Wherever, as you can see. Love Mew. I've talked about them many times, and they're a favorite. So anyway, so then that was I was like a year or two later, they did another record store item, 2006's In the Glass Kind of Kite. Their biggest record. They're one kind of overt concept of some sort. The first half, side A, really is just one long suite. I mean, Zookeeper's Boy and Special, maybe the climax, but Apocalypso, I love the riff. Why Are You Looking Grave? The second side, side B, I've grown to like more and more. What is it? Savior of Jazz Ballet, especially, and Luis Luisa is just melancholy. It's so sad. I get lots of images when I listen to that. But this is a fantastic record. It was a grower. I first didn't like it. I thought they sounded like they were on Helium, like an Enya thing. This is my first impression of Mew. But then I went back and listened to it a few months later, and I was handing out stickers at a Muse show, actually, of all places. some woman gave me, and they totally won me over, and I've become a huge fan. So then 2009, unfortunately, the bass player rather, left, but they still managed to put out a really great record, another concept album called No More Stories, which is a long title. Yeah, it's got a lot of highlights, you know, new terrain, introducing Palace players, Vaccine, Sometimes Life Isn't Easy is probably my favorite part. Nervous, which is the reverse of New Terrain, for the last track. They reprise it. But yeah, this doesn't have Johan Wollert, I believe, the bass player that was been on the previous 4 records. They have 2 records before the ones I've shown. But anyway, it turned out great. You know, lead singer Jonas Beer, of course, that Jonas Beer. So then it was 6 years, and they put out another record. It took forever. It seemed like it was never. They did like solo and side projects. Jonas did a soundtrack, but they released Plus Minus in 2015. This is the final album. I don't know if it might be the final album ever with Bo Madsen, lead guitarist. But this is a great record. Rose is my favorite track on here, but it's like a 9-minute epic. But it's got Cross the River on Your Own, Night Believer, Witnessed. Kimbra's on one track. It's still really good. You know, it's a little different. I mean, there's a difference in the sound, but I find that this to be almost as good as those other 3 records I just showed. And then, of course, unfortunately, Bo left, but Johan rejoined. Johan Wollert rejoined for that record, and he was on this record, of course, original members. Silas, the drummer, was still with him, of course, and Jonas Bier, the lead singer. But yeah, this is 2017's visuals, which I have shown. I have an extra copy of this, so I'm probably going to maybe give that away in some sort of contest at some point. I need to figure that still out, but I know it has the sax player from Jazz Kamikaze, but they're also Danish. They're very influenced by Mew on 1 or 2 of these tracks. It's Twist Quest. There's a few decent songs. Carry Me to Safety. Candy Pieces All Smeared Out is weird. That has a weird dynamic change, but this is clearly my least favorite of all the Mew records. Even the first 2, I think I probably lean a little bit toward. That second record, Half the World's Watching, if it ever came out on vinyl, I would snatch it up. It's got not Coffee Break, but King Christian, and some other versions of some of the songs that end up on Frienders especially. But anyway, that's it for this part of the video, because I have another, like, 40 records here on the next part. But thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we'll see you next time.